Hey everybody, Rosematter here, and welcome to part 57 of my Umineko Let's Play. Last episode, we had the showdown you guys were waiting for. The newly introduced witch hunter Delanor versus Beatrice. And it seemed like the witch's side, they were on the losing end. Beatrice was up against the ropes, getting beat down by the Red Truth. And just when it seemed all hope was lost, Battler came in on her behalf and destroyed the Red Truth and came up with an alternative idea of how Kinzo could have escaped the study. So that's where we left off, and still a lot of mysteries. The bodies, how did the bodies move? Where is Kraus? And who is going to be, going next? So we're going to get back into this, and we are going to see where the story is going to take us from here. So let's go. In the Golden Land, the quiet rain just kept on falling. In the arbor sat the sad witch whose eyes had lost their glint and Battler. Virgilia could also be seen there. She sat next to Beato, knitting quietly. Lambda Delta's game had passed the climax of the first twilight, and they were taking a short break. Gazing out at the golden rose garden soaked with rain, Battler thought back on the present, what was to come, and what had happened so far. To Battler, thinking was itself a battle. Even with the game stopped and Beato unable to speak, he could still keep on fighting. Virgilia suddenly stopped her knitting. Battler had noticed too. Though none should have been able to visit this rose garden, they had noticed a silhouette approaching.
ここへたどり着ける者がいるとは。
あいつは。
Is it Erika? Or Delanor, okay. That silhouette walking through the quietly falling rain without so much as an umbrella was Delanor.
素晴らしい迷路庭園です。バラを楽しむにはとても良い趣向です。
お前。どうしてここに？
お久しぶりです、ミセス・ベアトリーチェ。はいえ、今はミセス・ワルギリアでしたか。
Mrs., are they married? That seems odd.
久しぶりですね、ドラノール。さあ、こちらへ。客人を雨に濡らすもてなしなど、私たちは心得ませんよ。
Kind of awkward, isn't she like a witch hunter? They're just like, I guess this is a truce. I don't know.
大丈夫。彼女は戦いに来たわけではありませんよ。
知り合いなのか？
Maybe this area, the Golden Land, this is kind of like a safe place. It's like a safe haven.
天界の古い友人の一人です。ずいぶん懐かしいですね。
懐かしいです。ミセス・ワルギリアは天界学問にも造形が深くおられる。よく解釈をめぐって議論を戦わせたものです。
あなたとの数々の知的冒険は楽しかったですよ。またいつかご一緒したいものですね。
ええ、またいつかご一緒に必ず。あなたとはぜひまた戦いたいです。
They used the word fight, but it didn't sound like they meant anything unpleasant by it. It sounded like something old chess rivals would say to each other. Well, this is all basically just intellectual fights, isn't it? It makes it seem like in this world like they're actually fighting with blades and stuff, but really they're just shooting down each other's arguments. Unlike Beato, it seemed that Virgilia had always acted properly and courteously. So she had many friends in various other worlds, including both heaven and the demon world. Surprisingly, Delanor was one of them. Delanor, who had crossed swords with me just a short while ago, bowed her head as if to thank us for allowing her shelter from the sudden rain, and sat in the seat Virgilia pointed out, like a guest.
紅茶に希望はありますか？
何でも。あなたの入れた紅茶ならどれでも絶品です。
では、ダージリンを。バトラ君もベアトも おかわりはいりますか？
ああ、俺もベアトももらうぜ。な。
As usual, Beato didn't answer, but if you quietly gave her a cup, she would sip it from time to time. There was still some black tea left in that cup, but it had already chilled, so Battler asked for a refill for Beato as well.
お噂には聞いておりました。残虐で知られた無限の魔女ベアトリーチェもこうなっては寂しいものです。
こいつはもうゲームには参加してねえよ。ゲーム版のこいつを操ってるのはラムダ・デルダだ。
存じております。ですが本来のこの世界の主です。そしてあなたはその主に招かれた正当な客人です。ですからこうしてご挨拶に参じました。
On the game board, Beato and I met Delanor, but those were the game pieces of those witches. They weren't Beato and me ourselves.
だからわざわざここまでバトラ君とベアトに挨拶に来てくれたのですか？相変わらず律儀な子ですね。
私の流儀です。はじめまして、ミスター・バトラー、ドラノール・エノックスと申します。敵対する役ではありますが、よろしくお願いいたします。
おう、後ろにはバトラーだ。よろしく頼むぜ。
はじめまして、ミス・ベアトリーチェ、ドラノール・エノックスと申します。
ベアト、お前に挨拶してるぜ。歓迎するとさ。
ありがとうございます、ミス・ベアトリーチェ。
The witch and the inquisitor, whose job it was to hunt witches, greeted each other around a tea table surrounded by the aroma of black tea. It was a strange sight. Regalia made gold butterflies appear from the palms of her hands, and transformed them into a teapot and a can of tea leaves. It was a very witch-like way of preparing tea. She was a witch, so it wasn't a particularly unusual sight, though I was a bit concerned about whether Delanor, an inquisitor, could allow herself to watch such a spectacle.
ご安心を。私は振る舞われる紅茶の立て方に口を挟むほど無粋ではありません。
魔法で紅茶を入れているのにか？
物陰に紅茶の道具があり、私たちに隠れてミセス・ワルギリアが紅茶を入れている。それを魔法で入れたと私たちが解釈判断し物語に記した。
It's funny how, in the last episode with the fight, I was like on Beatrice's side and of course on Battler's side, even though deep down I am like a Delanor in terms of like I want to know the human way of how things could have happened. I want to know like the realistic way rather than like things that could be magic. But I just get so caught up in the spectacle of like now I'm kind of on Beato's side a little bit. Like I want her to win, not in the way of like killing a bunch of people, but like I like her and Battler together. So when they're on the same side, I want to see them win. So and then seeing Delanor like break it down, like this is how I think it's actually happening. That's like in my mind, that's how I'm like, okay, that's the way I'm kind of thinking. I'm like, what is the human way to explain these things?
ノックス第9条でも認められる解釈です。
おやおや、9条の解釈は大法院でもタブー視されるほどのデリケートな問題のはず。私的発言とはいえ、首席異端審問官の発言と知られれば首が飛ぶかもしれませんよ。
私がどのような解釈を記そうともミセスの紅茶の味を何ら偽ることにはなりません。ですから私はその立て方を気にすることはないのです。
ほう。
Though she looked cold, she was a surprisingly tactful person. If Delanor were to deny the black tea had been prepared with magic, this magic would surely be crushed in an instant. However, even if it was depicted that a tea set existed here, and Virgilia had used it to make the tea normally, the result, that Virgilia had made tea, would still remain unchanged.
結果を闇に閉ざす魔法は邪悪です。私たちは許さない。しかし、家庭を包む魔法は邪悪とは限りません。 私の敵は邪悪であって魔法そのものではないのです。
なるほどな。紅茶のもてなしが出てくることが重要なんであって、その立て方についてどうこう突っ込まないのが客の礼儀ってわけか。
That's right. It's common courtesy to be grateful for tea that someone makes for you. There's nothing elegant about pushing your way into the kitchen and poking around through the tea-making process. Okay, all this tea talk is...
台所は客人を招く場
I
所では
want
あ
to
り
get
ません。
I want to get back to the mansion though. Like it left on such a epic end with the just Erika just being taken down several notches. It was so awesome. I was like, I want to get back to there. I want to see the aftermath of it.
そしてそこよりの配膳はもてなしの心で美しく飾られるべきです。どうぞ。暑いですよ。
ありがとうです。砂糖とミルクも欲しいです。
まだストレートでは飲めませんか？
子供なので甘くないとダメです。
魔法ってのは優しい嘘なのか。
Ah, okay. So we talk about black magic and white magic. White magic can be just something fun, whereas black magic is obviously the opposite.
嘘というと聞こえが悪いですね。
Maybe not fun, but it's like something to maybe make people feel better about stuff, or like a white lie, like not telling them the dirty truth.
日本語で表現する場合は就職と呼んだ方がよりふさわしいでしょう。
子供に飴を与えるとき、ポケットの中でぐしゃぐしゃになったのを出して与えるのと、素敵な手品を見せてそこから飴を出して与えたのでは、与える感情が全く違うはずです。
そりゃ手品でポンと飴を出された方がこじゃれてていいよな。
This is kind of, they're talking about the candy thing. This is making me think of Maria with her broken candy. I think that was like way back in episode 2, where her candy broke, and Beatrice gave her. Ah, so they're saying that, are they like maybe going back to that as like it was a sleight of hand trick to make it seem like she had given her, like she had fixed her candy, but probably just gave her a new one through some sleight of hand.
違います。飴を与えるという結果に対し、より美しく楽しい就職を与えたことに意味があるのです。
マリアちゃんに飴をあげる。
Yes, they did. They're talking about it.
ポケットから出して与えるのと、普段から良い子にしていたから
Or-
妖精さんが持ってきてくれたと言って、
Or a witch saying that she'll fix her candy. Huh?
こっそりポケットに忍ばせるのは全く違うという。
それを全員のアリバイを調べて、誰がポケットに忍ばせたのか調べ上げて特定するのは、私は無粋なことと思っています。
I said this in my theory video, that magic is basically it's interpreting things in a way that makes you feel better about things, like not wanting to deal with the harsh reality. So maybe it's kind of twisting things around to make it seem like it's, yeah, it's like a lie you tell yourself or to other people, and it can be used for good or for bad.
飴を受け取り、少女が喜んだという結果こそが重要です。そして少女を喜ばせるために就職されたことが意味あることなのです。
意外だな。魔法と名がつけば全否定みたいな感じで登場しやがったのに。
異端審問官としてはそう振る舞います。職務ですので。ですが、職務を離れているときはそこまで冷酷になりたくありません。
勤務中は市場は持ち込まないってわけか。うん。できるやつだな。
異端審問官として魔女を狩るのは仕事です。しかし、一個人としては魔女を憐れんでいます。しかし、異端審問官としては無慈悲に断罪します。結果において私が魔女たちを処刑するのに変わりはない。私の憐れみなど、所詮は無駄な就職に過ぎません。あってもなくても何も変わらない。
This feels like this is some very important talk right now about like witches, the embellishments, the difference between what is she, like what she said, she doesn't like the magic that conceals something or hides something in darkness, but not magic that makes people feel better.
ならなくてもいい。
そんなことはありませんよ。結果が同じでも心が違えば大きく意味が異なることもあります。あなたの母が焼いたクッキーは優れたパティシエが作るクッキーよりきっと美味しかったはず。それは心が込められていることを知っているからですよ。
そうだな。結果が同じに見えても真心ってやつがあるかないかで意味は全然変わるかもしれねえぜ。
This does feel like this is an important conversation. They're talking kind of in what's the word I'm thinking of? Like in a way that you have to try and interpret it, but this feels like we're getting kind of the heart of the magic and witches and all this stuff a little bit more.
そうでしょうか。私の心などあってもなくても何の意味もない。
Delanor's gaze fell to her cup a little sadly.
なことはね、今の話を聞いて俺はお前の見方を少し変えたぜ。だから心が無意味なんてことは絶対にねえ。
Regelia was a little surprised to hear the words she should have said coming from Battler's mouth. After all, understanding the heart was the first step towards magic's true nature. Perhaps Battler was unconsciously starting to understand, bit by bit, the essence of Beato, the essence of witches, and the very first essence of all, the essence of magic. Whether you want to become a witch or vanquish them, the very first step is learning about magic. Regelia was sure she felt this faint change within Battler.
先ほどの戦いではありがとうございました。最後の最後に慈悲を与えてくれたこと感謝いたします。
俺は俺じゃねえぜ。ラムダデルタが操ってたんだ。
He's like, I would have crushed you. I joined in on the 5th game partway through. At this point in the story, I still hadn't joined. So up until the point when I did join, the Peace Me is probably being controlled by Burn Castell or Lambda Delta.
あいつらどういう気まぐれだろうな。妙にかっこよくしてくれやがって。あれじゃまるで俺がベアトを助けに来たナイト様みてえじゃないか。
ラムダデルタ教は魔女と人間のそれぞれが均衡しドローゲームとなることを望んでいます。エリカの登場により天秤が人間側に大きく傾いたのでベアトに加担するように物語を操ったのでしょう。
それは知っています。しかし駒はできないことはできない。そして本来の性格にふさわしい行為を得意とする。だからあれは確かにあなたのバトラの成し得たことです。だからあなたに感謝するのです。
何もしてねえのに褒められるってのは妙な気分だな。ゲームがもう少し進めば俺の駒も俺が操るようになるだろうよ。その時にも優しく手加減するかはわからねえぜ。
私も同じです。次に太刀を交える時は遅れは取りません。
上等だ。相手してやるぜ。全力で来い。
約束します。全力です。
Delanor. I thought she was an emotionless killer doll without a heart, but maybe she actually is pretty approachable. Though of course neither of us will show any mercy when fighting on the game board. For a while we gazed at the rain-drenched rose garden as we quietly enjoyed our tea. Alright, so there was a little thing about magic and love
一
and
つ謝らねばなりま
witches.
せん。
But let's get back to the mansion. Delanor suddenly murmured something.
何がだ。
Unless they're gonna drop some, like, really important information here.
さっきの戦いのことならもうノーサイドだぜ。お互い全力で戦ったろ。勝ち負けは時の運だぜ。
いいえ、時の運ではありません。 それに任せられなかったから私は謝罪に訪れたのです。
何の話だ？
勝ちを譲った
Oh.
ということですね。
Regalia spoke softly without hesitating in her knitting.
はい、ミスター・バトラー。
ミスターはかゆいぜ。バトラでいい。
バトラー、謝罪します。私たちは全力ではありませんでした。
分かっていますよ。金蔵は全ゲーム開始時に死亡している。すでにベアトによって語られている真実で
It's funny, I get so caught up. Like, I knew he was dead. Obviously, I knew Kinzo was dead, but I got so caught up in that fight of Battler explaining how Kinzo might still be alive. And I, like, part of me wanted to believe it, even though I know it wasn't true.
あの戦いはバトラ君には引き分けに持ち込めれば上々。
It's funny, too, because that's something that Battler himself was the one to theorize that he was dead, and then he was the one arguing against it.
勝ち目は絶対にないはずの戦いでした。
Although we know it's just a piece Battler, it's not actually him.
そうだな。一言そう言われちまえばそれで終わっちまう戦いだった。なぜその赤を使わなかった？まさかステイルメイトだからとでも言うのか？
ノックス第2条、探偵方法に超自然能力の使用を禁ず。その赤き真実を私たちは直接使うことができません。しかし窓が降雨後に開かれたことはないという赤き真実を私は窓を守っていたコーネリアに持たせていました。
ドーン、そいつでチェックメイトだ。どうしてあの姉ちゃんがその切り札を切らなかった？
金系、我が赤が破れる道理はなし。そなたの望み叶うことなしと知りたまえ。
Though she had fought calmly up until that point, she quickly got flustered when I dashed forwards. I thought that she'd been frightened by my sudden attack, but the truth was different. Even though she held a trump card which could completely repel me, she suddenly became unable to use it and hesitated.
わかりません。突然あの瞬間に切り札の使用が禁じられたのです。それを失った時点であなたの勝利は約束されました。
ゲームマスターラムダデルタ教の干渉でしょう。
あいつめ、結局あの戦いは全てラムダデルタの手のひらでの茶番ってわけか。
Just doing it to make the game more interesting, I guess, because if I said they have to balance it out so that one side doesn't have so much more power over the other.
俺たちはあいつの筋書き通りにお芝居をやらされたってわけだ。
不愉快とは思います。しかし全力で来いとおっしゃられたバトラにそれを打ち明けぬわけにはいきませんでした。許してください。
それでもあなたは切り札を失っても残されたカードで全力で戦いましたよ。あなたを非難など誰にできるでしょう。
そうだな。むしろ余計なことをしやがってとラムダデルタを怒るべきだぜ。
金蔵が存在しないのはすでに確定事項のはず。ラムダデルタ教もベルンカステル教もそれをよくご存知のはずです。なのに2人とも金蔵が存在する余地を残してゲームを進めています。まるで2人で結託して金蔵を否定させないかのようです。
つまりじい様をわざと逃がした。
はい、何かの意図があるに違いありません。
確かに少しおかしいですね。ラムダデルタ教とベルンカステル教は魔女が優勢にならない限り対立する関係にあるはず。
That is interesting. Like, what could their end game be?
現在の流れでは2人が結託することは考えがたいのですが、
私には何か邪悪な目的があるように思えてなりません。それをお伝えしたくて私はここまで参りました。
お前そんなことのためにわざわざここまで来てくれたのか？
はい、 ですので私はもう用事を終えました。これにて失礼しようと思い
Alright.
ます。
That's definitely some interesting intel for sure. But, like, can't trust Lomnadelt and Bernkastel even more. Can't even trust that they're doing what they say they're going to be doing, which is being on opposite sides of each other. Secretly, they're working together for some sort of weird objective.
ゲームも時期に再開するでしょう。エリカと今後のゲームを打ち合わせねばなりませんので。
Delenar gulped down the last of her black tea and stood up.
次は第二の番の戦いにて、そこにて私は再び無慈悲の太刀を振り上げるでしょう。ですからどうかバトラも私に慈悲などかけぬように。
わかってるぜ。手加減なんかしたらこっちの頭が叩き割られちまうぜ。
ゲーム版での私はベルンカステル教の駒フルドエリカの手先も同然です。これからも敵として何度も立ちはだかるでしょう。
She's like one of those damn bosses in a game that you just like, you keep thinking that you've defeated, but they keep coming back.
しかし私の心は本来中立です。いや、忘れてください。そんなことはあなたと私の関係においては何の意味もない。
あるぜ。強敵であることは間違いないが、あんたをムカつきはしなくなった。エリカのやつは最高にムカつくがな。
よかった。私もフルドエリカにはムカついています。
I like how everybody's turning on Erika now. At first she was like almost a novelty, and everybody was just like so enamored with her, and now she's getting on everybody's nerves. Delanor's expression finally softened slightly. At the very last moment, it felt as though we finally understood each other.
フルドエリカはとても邪悪な存在です。先ほどの敗北で面目を潰され、復讐心に燃えたぎっています。何を企んでいるのか私にも分かりません。ですがろくなことのわけがない。注意してください。
ベルンカステルの困って時点で気を許す気はないぜ。
Delanor nodded as though satisfied, left the eaves of the arbor, and walked out into the rain.
あのような邪悪の手先を務めることになろうとは。どうして私はこの世界に呼ばれたのか。
Delanor let out a small sigh. Pieces can do nothing except fulfill the function they had been given, and that function is given to them by the one who controls them. She probably can't disobey Bernkastel, the player in control of her.
呼んだのはベルンカステル教かもしれない。しかしこの世界に受け入れたのはベアトです。この子が望まなければあなたは迷路庭園を抜けここへは至れなかったのだからね、ベアト。
ミス・ベアトリーチェ、あなたは私に何を求められるのか。邪悪の手先としての私があなたの何かに答えられるならば幸いなのですが。
She spoke to Beato, but of course there was no response. After bowing once more in thanks for the black tea, Delanor disappeared off into the rainy rose garden.
この黄金鏡にはベアトが望まない限り誰もたどり着けないのか。
ええ、ドラノールをここへ呼んだのはこの子なのですよ。
ベアトがあいつをここへ呼び俺に会わせたのか。
But I know of a person who reached this place despite Beato's wishes. Angie. In the last game, Angie reached this place by herself, even though she was an uninvited guest. Was that also something Beato desired?
ここに私がいてあなたがいることもベアトがいることもそしてドラノールが招かれたことも全てはこの子が望んだことなのです。ドラノールとあなたが過ごしたこのささやかな紅茶の時間さえも
ベアト、俺はあいつから何を知れと言うんだ。それがお前の心臓を探し出し、安らかに眠らせることと関係があるのか。
Delanor A. Knox, the natural enemy of witches. Inquisitor. A vanguard, mystery, who denies fantasy. Is she here to help me, gouge out your heart, and arrest your breathing? All right, we're back to the mansion.
片足で
Sort of. Cornelia slowly got up and stood on one leg as she'd been ordered. Oh, is Erika gonna like torture them for failing her? Her hands were clasped behind her back because she'd been ordered to do so. She's gonna like execute them. Then with a loud thump, Erika shoved her from behind with both hands. Cornelia landed on the floor face first with a thud.
立ってください
Oh, she's like playing with her little toy before she probably kills them for like, you know, not doing what she wanted them to do
片足で
and enjoying this. Is it because Erika knew that, like, Cornelia had that red truth that she was supposed to use about the whole thing? Like, Kinzo's dead. We know he's dead, so why did you not use that about the whole thing with the window? Cornelia rose shakily. Then once again, she stood on one leg as she had been ordered. She had been ordered not to try and keep her balance, so she had fallen on her face over and over again. She had barely managed to protect her nose, but after smashing against the floor so many times, her face was bright red. She wasn't shedding any tears. No, she couldn't shed them, because she was forbidden to do even that.
立ってください片足で
It's like she's trying to get some little bit of, like, power back because she got so decimated by Battler. That was so satisfying. Once again, I should be on Erika's side because she's trying to find out the truth. Thump. Thud.
立ってください片足で
Thump. Thud. What if this was just the rest of the episode? Thump. Thud. Thump. Thud. Erika repeated this falling torture over and over again. At times like this, Erika hated counting things. So she decided that when she ran out of fingers to keep count on, she would just keep on going until she lost interest. However, Erika's main redeeming feature was that she never lost interest in anything, so the torture continued on without end. Erika didn't know the truth of why Cornelia had been unable to fully protect the window, so the whole time since then, she had been criticizing her, blaming her entirely for their defeat.
近景謹んで申し上げ奉るコーネリアの咎を許したまえすでに彼女の咎のみそぎには十分なりや
ああそうですかではここからはあなたが代わってくださいガートルードに咎はなきなりやガートルード立ってください片足で両手は後ろで組むように
Gertrude followed the order and clasped her hands behind her back, standing on one leg.
耐えて踏みとどまってはダメですよ膝を折ることも許しません涙をこぼすことも許しませんからいいですね
御意
ガートルード
Erika took her time walking behind Gertrude. She was even enjoying making her wonder when she'd push. At that moment, Gertrude and Cornelia burst into a bright light and disappeared. Delanor had returned at some point and had sent them back to heaven for the time being. Erika, who'd had her fun spoiled, directed an openly malicious expression at Delanor.
ミス・エリカ、我が部下の咎は上司の私が背負います。どうか部下をお許しください。
ノーサンキューですお仕置きってのは苦痛を与えるから意味があるんです傷一つつかない無痛覚の人形女など面白くもなんともありません
Erika slowly grabbed hold of the back of Delanor's hair and tugged on it unrelentingly. Delanor's neck tilted unnaturally backwards, creaking.
傷はつきませんが傷つきはします。
あんたに傷つく心なんてあるわけもないです。
魔女狩り殺人人形の分際で私に口答えする気ですか？大ベルンカステル教の使者にして分身のこの私に。
いいえ。
あんたらが使えないから私がベルンカステル教にお叱りを受けるんです。二度と無様な真似は見せないでください。いいですね。
She pulled back the hair she'd grabbed even more strongly. This didn't cause Delanor any physical pain, but she could clearly feel Erika's ill will.
失礼しました。お許しください。
クズが。
With a sound like taut string snapping, she ripped out several strands of Delanor's hair. Then Erika waved her hand about as though trying to shake off something dirty that had gotten stuck to it.
まあいいです。これで終わりにします。ようやく私の怒りも収まり、灰色の脳細胞がうずいてきましたから、あの使えない二人を呼び戻して現場の再構築をしてください。推理ゲームを始めましょう。
わかりました。ガートルード、コーネリア。
よい。
The two of them reappeared behind Delanor and reconstructed the crime scene for Erika, the one who had just been tormenting them.
金蔵の失踪なんて第一の番のおまけでしかありません。さあ第一の番の検証を始めましょう。とその前に、実は私たちは殺人事件の発生以前から一つの謎を突きつけられていることをご存知ですか？
はい。昨夜の24時の何者かのノックによって現れた片翼のわしの刻まれた手紙です。
Oh yeah, I forgot all about
そう
that.
です。一見物語はその瞬間に人間の誰にも不可能であったと語り、未知の魔女が存在しているかのような幻想を作り出しています。まずはこの魔女幻想を叩き潰すことから始めましょう。手紙が届けられた昨晩の食堂の状況から確認していきます。
了解です。ガートルード、コーネリア、昨晩の食堂の親族会議を再構築。
よい。
The family conference last night was conducted with the adult relatives and Battler present. And partway through, the servants arrived to serve tea.
手紙が現れた瞬間の全員の立ち位置を確認しましょうか。どうなってましたっけ？
近景謹んで申し上げる。親族会議以前にエリカ、ジョージ、ジェシカ、マリア、南條、ゴーダ、熊沢は屋敷より退出しゲストハウスへ移動したものなり。
近景謹んで申し上げる。残りはクラウス、夏日、源氏の3人のみが2階廊下におり、それ以外の全員は食堂におりしこと申し。
屋敷は親族会議に先んじて全て施錠されていたため、それ以外の人間は屋敷に入ることが
So
で
we
き
don't
ま
just
せ
have a
ん。
locked room scenario, we have a locked mansion scenario.
おやおや、それでは屋敷内の誰にも食堂の扉をノックして手紙を置くことはできないということになりますね。
そうなります。その人物こそが手紙を記した魔女ベアトリーチェであるとの魔女側の主張でしょう。
バカバカしい、くだらないトリックです。手紙が24時の瞬間に置かれた保証はありません。それ以前にもう置かれていたと考えるのが常識的です。
手紙が発見されるほんの数分前にシャノンとカノンは
So
刑
here
事
we
に
are.
呼んでいます。
Here we are going to my top two suspects, Shannon and Cannon, as being behind this. Or maybe working together.
二人を迎え入れる際、廊下に手紙などの不審物が一切なかったことを
Gotta
複数
figure
が
this
確
out.
認しています。
100万人いなかったクラウス、夏日、源氏のうちの誰かが その直後に隙を見て手紙を置いただけのことでしょう。いえいえ、ゲストハウスに行ったはずの人物でも可能です。屋敷は施錠され、外部の人間は入れなかったそうですが、ゲストハウスに戻ったふりをして屋敷内にこっそりと隠れていた人間がいたな
Yeah,
ら、
that's the thing. If everybody went to the guest house, or multiple people were in kind of cahoots, and maybe this is all a big setup, multiple people are in on this, then all they have to do is just look to other people who are in on the plan, and they could verify the alibi even though it's not true.
その人物が手紙を置いたとしても何ら問題はありません。
金形、青き真実、有効なり
となると問題はノックです。手紙と違い、ノックの瞬間にその場に存在しなくてはなりません。
Maybe there was some sort of contraption that could knock on the door. I don't know. I can't explain this one.
なるほど、それこそが魔女という名のいないはずの人物が存在する証拠だと。実にバカバカしいにも程があります。その程度でこのフルドエリカが屈服するとでもまずノックが確かに食堂の扉を叩いたものなのか疑えます。例えばですが、屋敷の構造上2階の特定の柱を叩くと音が柱を伝わり、食堂の人間はあたかも扉をノックされたかのように誤認してしまうとか、あるいは偶然何かの音をノックと聞き間違え同様に誤認してしまうとか、あるいはノック音を録音したテープがこっそり再生されていて、それがちょうどあのタイミングで聞こえるように細工されていたのかもしれない。いずれにせよ扉の向こうに誰もいなくてもノックいくらでも考えられます。いかがです、我が主、我が推理。
だそうだけど、いかが？
ベルンの可愛いコマが精一杯頑張って考えた青き真実みたいだから、気前よく赤き真実を
Oh,
サ
here
ー
we
ビスしちゃおう
go.
かしら。まずは手紙からいこうかしら。24時の大時計の鐘の時に鳴ったノック、そして扉を開けたらそこに置かれていた片翼の足の封筒の手紙。
Time for London Delta to shut all those down.
客間にいなかった人間がこっそりと廊下に置いていったのだろうという想像は実に王道よね。クラウス、ナツヒ、ゲンジの3人はその手紙に触れてさえいない。
へえ、
Maybe they didn't touch it physically, but maybe they had like a grabber, like a little grabby thing, and they. I'm trying to think of like wordplay to work around it, but that's silly.
じゃあシャノン・カノンが給仕に訪れて扉を閉じる瞬間に最後に食堂に入った最後尾の人間は誰？例えばカノンとか。最後尾のカノンが扉を閉めるときにこっそりポトリと手紙を落とせば簡単じゃない？
食堂の全員の誰も、いえ、もっとシンプルな言い方をするわ。24時の時点で屋敷内にいた誰一人、あの手紙を廊下に置いた者はいない
Alright.
わ。
And now she's probably gonna shoot down why it couldn't possibly be anyone who was in the guest house either.
触れた者はいないという言い方はできないわけ？
そりゃそうでしょう。彼らは拾って触れたわ。触れてないとまでは言えるわけない。
なるほど。じゃあこういう解釈だわ。24時の時点で屋敷外に存在した何者かがあらかじめ手紙を廊下以外の場所に置いたのよ。そして何らか
Oh,
の方
okay.
法でそれが移動して最終的に廊下に置かれた。
仮の想像ですが、例えば使用人たちが押してきたお茶の道具を積んだ配膳車の下部の裏側に貼り付けられていたとか、それは時間が経てば剥がれてしまうような簡単な接着、それはやがて剥がれ落ちて存在しないはずの魔女が置いていった手紙となる。つまり時間差で手紙が現れるようにすることで、真の差出人がその時刻にアリバイを作ろうとする古典的トリックです。
金形、青き真実、有効なりえ。
ちょうど都合よく食堂の扉の前に落ちたのは犯人にとって幸運。下手をすればそこは厨房か廊下か、はたまた食堂の中だったかもしれません。
Alright, we have to get to the knock now, and I'm sure Lambda Delta will say it was an actual knock, and it was a knock on the door. It wasn't misheard. It wasn't coming from somewhere else.
はあ、グッと。食堂の中ならば随分と素敵ですね。全員の監視の中、突然床に手紙が現れる。食堂という密室に忽然とその場の誰も触れていないという赤を維持したまま。
お見事です。配膳者の下部に手紙を貼り付ける行為なら誰が犯人でも可能です。
手紙についてはまずね。でもそれと同じ論法がノックについても通用するかしら。じゃあもう一度同じやり取りをしようかしら。
どうぞ。
クラウス、ナツヒ、源氏の3人はノックをしていない。これは扉だけはノックしていないという限定的な意味じゃないわよ。音が伝わる柱だろうと、録音したカセットテープの再生ボタンだろうと、そのノック音を生み出したことは断じてないという意味。無論直接的にも間接的にも意図的にも偶発的にも無意識的にもね。
すでにくさびを打ってるけど繰り返すわ。クラウス、ナツヒ、源氏たち3人以外の誰かがノック、あるいはノックと誤認させる音を発生させたのかもしれない。
金家、謹んで申し上げたてまつる。24時の時点で2階廊下にいたクラウス、ナツヒ、源氏の3人と食堂にいた全員以外の一切の人間は屋敷内に存在しなかった旨申し上げたてまつる。
金形、謹んで申し上げる。クラウス、ナツヒ、源氏の3人に加え食堂の全員もまたノックしていないこと申し上げる。このノックとはノック音を生み出す直接的、間接的、意図的、無意識的、偶発的な全てを含めるものなり。
Maybe the culprit has trained some sort of bird to stay hiding in place, and then at a certain time it goes and it makes a knocking sound by knocking against the door with its beak. I can get some out there theories as well, just like Battler. It's no small bomb theory, and it wouldn't violate the no humans, made that knock, so checkmate. A direct knock refers to someone literally hitting a door to make a knocking sound. An intentional knock refers to someone creating a fake knocking sound with intent to make it appear that someone knocked. An unintentional knock refers to someone unintentionally creating a fake knocking sound. A coincidental knock refers to some kind of coincidence creating a fake knocking sound.
つまり屋敷にいた人物全員がノック音の発生源とはなり得ないという意味です。そしてこの全員とは誰も把握していない観測されていない人物であったとしても含みます。
Anyone who is in the mansion also includes any unknown person X who is secretly hiding in the mansion. Therefore, this literally meant that it was impossible for anyone inside the mansion to knock, with no wordplay allowed.
なるほど。どうひっくり返そうとも、いわゆるゲストハウス組にしかノック音の生成は不可能というわけですね。例えば私、このフルドエリカがカセットテープにノック音を録音し、それをどこかにこっそり仕掛け、ちょうど24時頃に再生されるような仕掛けを施したなら、もちろん24時の時点では屋敷にはいないわけです。これなら何も問題ないじゃないですか。
問題ないです。しかし扉の前に手紙があればこそノックがその存在を知るきっかけとなりますが、
The person would have to know that the letter was at the other side of the door. Otherwise, what is the point of making that knocking sound other to alert people that that letter's there?
もし厨房などに手紙が落下していたら、ノックは手紙の存在を教えるものにはならなかったように思います。
Unless the knock is just completely separate, has a separate reason for happening, inconsequential of the letter being there. If the trick in Erika's theory about the letter being stuck to the serving cart was accurate, then the location that the letter fell was a matter of luck. The people in the dining hall were able to notice it due to the knock only because it had fortunately fallen near the door. However, if the location it fell was a matter of chance, it might have landed in the far-off kitchen, or even remained stuck the entire time. If that had happened, the knock would have been ignored as though they just imagined it. In other words, the knock by itself carries no message at all. Only in combination with the letter is the knock capable of asserting that someone existed there. In that case, the knock can't be combined with the theory of the letter falling from the bottom of a serving cart in a random location. The letter must be reliably positioned on the other side of the door so that it can be discovered thanks to the knock. However, it was declared in red that no one in the mansion placed the letter in the hallway.
この廊下に置いたという赤ももっと細かく言い直すわ。屋敷内の誰一人手紙を廊下に置いた者はいない。それは直接的、間接的、意図的、偶発的、無意識的、全ての概念だよ。例えば配膳車に停車すると手紙が落ちるという仕掛けがあったと仮定する。これならば食堂の扉でノックするために一度停車するだろうことが事前に予見できるから、うまいこと扉の前に手紙を落とせるように思えるかもしれない。しかしこれもダメなのよ。配膳車を停車させることが廊下に手紙を置くという行為を間接的に示してる。よってこれでは台車を押していたシャノンとカノンが間接的に無意識に置いたことになってしまう。だからこれもダメ。さらに言うと、時間が経てば剥がれて落ちる仕掛けもそこまで配膳車を押した人間によって偶発的に無意識に置いたことになってしまう。もちろんこれもダメ。
復唱要求。24時の時点で屋敷以外に存在するのはエリカ、ジョージ、ジェシカ、マリア、南條、ゴーダ、熊沢のみである。
Say if someone in the dining hall slipped out the window just for the instant of midnight and didn't exist in the mansion at that time. With a bit of wordplay like that, it might be possible to get around the red truth.
復唱要求？気前よく赤をサービスしてるからってちょっと欲張りすぎじゃない？私ベアトみたいにバカじゃないから相手の求める復唱にペラペラ答えたりなんかしないわよ。
今度お風呂でマシュマロとコンペイトーのスクラブで全身マッサージしてあげるわ。生皮剥げるくらいにゴリゴリと。
絶対よ、約束だからね、ジュルリー。じゃあいいわ、サービスしちゃう。復唱要求に答えるわ。24時の時点で屋敷以外に存在するのはエリカ、ジョージ、ジェシカ、マリア、南條、ゴーダ、熊沢のみである。
In other words, try as we might, those 8 people, including Erika, cannot exist inside the mansion, much less in front of the door. And at the same time, try as we might, those who were inside the mansion cannot exist outside the mansion. So there's also the matter of this guy, too, the one who's been harassing Natsui. So if they've said that that person is not included in people outside the mansion, but also people outside the mansion and also inside the mansion, he's not mentioned at all. Is it someone who already exists, who's just like maybe putting on an act, putting on a voice? Because there's that person just lurking in the background. I'm like, well, we gotta remember that person. And there's a whole thing about like the amount of people on the island, and this person's not included in it. So I'm assuming it's a person who already exists and they're just playing an act, I guess.
なら配膳車ではなく廊下の天井に手紙を貼り付けてあったのかもしれません。廊下の天井は案外高いから堂々と貼り付けてあっても誰も気づかないかもしれない。これなら廊下に落ちるのは確定的。そしてそれを屋敷外の人物が行ったなら赤も潜れる。ぐっと私
金慶謹んで申し上げる。廊下天井に手紙が存在したことはなきに
Erika's like, damn it.
近家謹んで申し上げる。配膳者に手紙が触れたことはなきと知りたまえ。
Man, they're just being real generous with the red truce now, aren't they?
知らないです、そんなこと。
She's like, I am not having luck.
とにかく屋敷以外の人間が何かのトリックであそこに手紙を置いてみせたんです。
First she gets humiliated by Battler, and now she can't even seem to get this nailed down.
あの手紙とノックでベアトリーチェを存在させようなどという目論みはこのフルドエリカには断じて通用しません。
近家謹んで申し上げる。屋敷以外の全員は親族会議開始後屋敷内にて何を行うことも不可能なり。
And also, these guys are the witch hunters. I like how they've gone on the opposite side now, and now they're fighting against Erika. They're supposed to be on her side. But, I mean, you have to rule out things to get to the truth, right?
じゃあ親族会議以前に屋敷以外の何者かが何らかの仕掛けを施したのよ。天井と配膳者以外でです。近家青木真実
Oh,
向こう
invalid.
なりや。なんでですか。それしかないでしょ。天井と配膳者以外の何かに屋敷以外の誰かが何か仕掛けをしたのよ。近家その何かを特定もしくは仮定せぬ限り青木真実とは認められぬものなり。
近家手紙についてのエリカ教の青木真実
Erika's like,
全て
this is
失われ
no
たものな
fun.
り。
This is no fun anymore. I'm taking my ball and going home.
全て失われたです。言い方にもう少し気を使ってください。使えない家具の皆さん。
I'm sure even though they seem emotionless, they're having a little bit of fun in knocking her down a peg after the way she treated them.
その仕掛けを思いつきさえすれば即座にチェックメイトなんです。それを全てこの探偵フルドエリカによくもそんな口を。
Erika's face twisted. These words that seemed to deny Erika. No, Erika's deductions were the worst form of torture and humiliation for her. But you know what? After torturing these girls, get your comeuppance a little bit.
ミスエリカ、手紙の謎は一度保留してはいかがです。ノックの推理、屋敷以外の何者かがカセットテープなどで聞かせたとする青きくさびは未だに有効です。音が可能なら手紙もまた不可能ではないはず。
As Erika made to grab and pull Gertrude's hair, Delanor stopped her with those words.
そうです。ノックについては私の青き真実未だ有効なはずです。全てを否定されてなんていません。我が主、手紙の謎は必ずや解いてみせます。お時間の猶予をお許しください。しかしノックの謎については確かにここに屋敷以外の人物がカセットテープなどでノック音を聞かせる仕掛けを施したとする青きくさびでうがちました。
本当に可愛い子ね、ペルンの駒は。本当にけなげだわ。とりあえず2つの謎のうち1つは高3だけど1つは解けたからお許しをって叫んでる。どうする？許してあげる？
そうね、私の駒の分際で降参なんて恥さらし絶対に許せないところだけれど、一つは解いてみせたのなら今回は多めに見てあげようかしら。
我が主。
When Berncastle said she'd let it slide, Erika couldn't hide her relief.
じゃあお仕置きだわ、エリカちゃん。すべての人物は
Oh,
ノック
here
音を
we
誤
go.
認することはない。
Killing blow.
へえ、何それ。
ノック音を誤認しないということはつまりノック音によく似た他の音をノック音と勘違いしたりはしないということよ。柱を叩くとノックに似た音がするなんてのもアウト。ノック音をカセットテープに録音したとしてもそれはもはやノック音を録音したテープの音であってノック音ではない。だからこれもアウト。つまり実際にあの扉を叩いたノック音を全員は正確に識別し絶対に聞き間違えないということよ。あの扉を直接叩く以外のあらゆる音を ノックと誤解することは絶対にありえないということ。
そんな。でもそれじゃあ、あの24時の鐘の音の時、扉を叩ける人物が存在しないことになるじゃありませんか。
Alright, Erika, time to stand on one foot, hands behind your back.
そうよ、存在しないわよ。だって黄金の魔女ベアトリーチェが叩いたんだもの。
つまりあの扉を叩く以外ごまかしようはないってことね。ならこういうのはどう？扉をノックしてくれる何かの仕掛けとか、自動のドアノッカーみたいな仕掛けが。
Hey, I said something like that, like their contraption that could hit the door. But then I'm sure they'd find it if such a thing existed.
ノックは人が手で扉を叩くものよ。仕掛けで叩いたなんて認めないわ。
Maybe they cut Kinzo's hand off of his body and used it on the contraption. That way, human hand is still hitting the door.
24時の鐘の時にノックが聞こえたわ。その時食堂の人物全員が確かにそれを聞いたわ。そして彼らは誰もノック音を誤認しない。クラウス、ナツヒ、ゲンジの3人はノックに関わっていない。それ以外の人物は誰も屋敷内に存在もしない。そしてノックは直接扉の前に立ち、手で扉を叩く行為を指す。ねえベル、どう？私の赤は。まだ第一の晩以前なのになかなかシンプルで遊びがいがあるでしょ。黄金の魔女はノックの音とともに静かに降臨。
面白いわ。本当に面白いわラムダ。こうでなくっちゃ。ああ面白い。
The two witches doubled over laughing, as though this was the most fun thing in the world.
若主、ご安心よ。その程度の赤、我が灰色の脳細胞は時間さえ与えられれば必ずや答えを導き出してみせます。あらそう、ありがとう。そして失望だわエリカ。退屈だわエリカ。この私の駒にして分身のあなたにもお手上げなんて本当に情けなくて笑えるわ。わからないならいつまでも沈黙しててちょうだい。そして分かった時だけ口を開いてちょうだい。あんたなんて所詮は駒、いてもいなくても私がゲームを進めるには支障がないのだから。特に推理が思いつかないならおとなしく駒置き場にでも戻って埃をかぶっててちょうだい。使えない駒は記憶に留めるのも苦痛だわ。
ベルンは忘れっぽいからね。あんたもうちょっと頑張らないとベルンに忘れられちゃうわよ。忘却の駒置き場で永遠に埃にまみれなが
Now,
ら
this is making me actually kind of feel bad for Erika.
とっても辛いと思うけれど。
ご安心よ大ラムダデルタ卿、そして我が主。必ずやお気に入りいただくことができるよう二度と失望させる活躍を約束いたします。あら、さすがは私の分身ね。頼もしいわ。なら本当に頑張ってね。いろいろとあまり活躍がないと私あなたのこと忘れちゃうかもしれないんだから。
As the two witches giggled, they continued discussing the letter and the knock. There was no room for Erika to step in. If she resigned herself to that, she would literally have no place to go and would be buried in an eternal oblivion. Erika endured with a hideous expression, looking with shame at the back of the master who was ignoring her. And with both fists clenched, she thought frantically for some kind of breakthrough. I am the detective. I am Furudo Erika. I am the peace and double and servant of the late great Lady Berncastel. I'll definitely make her satisfied. Satisfied, definitely, definitely. Gah, gah, Ushiromi Battler. How dare you humiliate me so? As she stood there, ignored by the witches and shrouded in darkness, it looked like she had been made to go stand on her own in the hallway. With a crime in the early morning, we'd completely forgotten about breakfast, so we now had our first meal of the day at a time that could never be called breakfast time. Even Goto-san's wonderful meal, which had supposedly been in the works since yesterday night, provided no comfort. Several empty seats quietly burned at us with a pain-filled sadness. Then in the middle of this meal that felt like a vigil, Erika suddenly stood up. Everyone focused on her to see what was the matter. Her expression was somewhere on the line between invigorated and insane, as though she'd come up with some groundbreaking and strange invention.
おい、どうした？大丈夫か？
わかりました。わかりました。私にわからないとお思いですか？ええ、わかりましたもん。そんなバカなことあるわけがない。
With an ugly expression covered with cold sweat, Erika glared and lashed out at Battler.
分かったって何が？
あなたが3階の書斎から飛び降りられるわけなんかないじゃないですか。私たちは誰一人あんたが飛び降り中庭に着地したところなんて見てないんですから。あなたは中庭からはしごをかけて3階の窓にルドルフさんが登るのを見ていた時、その外壁の構造をよく観察し、雨どいなどをうまく伝えば3階の窓から中庭に降りることは不可能じゃないと気づいたんです。あなたは飛び降りてなんかいない。雨どいなどを伝え、みっともなく外壁を這い降りたんです。
Okay, Erika. I mean, assuming that Kinzo was alive and he made it down this way, does it really make a difference? The thing is, you can make it down from the 3rd floor to the bottom without dying. I just love she calls him like a loser. You clamber down like a loser. She's really grasping at straws.
どうです？私の青き真実は。さあ、反論は？
反論って
I love how he's just brushing her off too, like she's just a little gnat, not even worth his attention.
反論はない。ならば私の真実は有効ですね。ほら見たことか。かっこつけて飛び降りたように見えたのは全て幻想。あんたはかっこつけて飛び出し雨どいにしがみついただけなんです。
あの時の論点は
Yeah,
じいさまが
exactly.
書斎を脱出可能だったかどうか。
I almost feel bad for her. She's just so desperate to find the answer and be like, see, master, look, I did it. She just wants validation so badly.
そしてじいさまは窓から抜け出すことも可能だった。俺はそれを証明しただけだぜ。飛び降りようが這い降りようがそれは変わらねえはずだがな。
はぐらかさないでください。人間風情が3階から飛び降りられるはずがないんです。それ見たことか。それ見たことか。いかがです、我が主、我が推理。
お前疲れてんのか？飯くらい落ち着いて食えよ。
When he escaped to the courtyard through the window, Battler really did use the rain gutter to crawl down the wall, just like Erika said. His hand slipped halfway, and he fell from a considerable height, but he managed to land on his feet without injuring himself. No one witnessed this, but most likely everyone except Erika, currently in the dining hall, had realized that something like this had happened. So here we're going back to the difference between, like, the quote-unquote magic and reality, where he made it seem like something happened, but it was a trick. No one had believed he jumped down from the 3rd floor window in the first place, even if they hadn't witnessed it directly. So they had no clue what Erika was complaining about and obsessing over all of a sudden, and started to whisper, glancing at her with cold eyes and dubious faces.
反論できないでしょ。あなたの飛び降りは否定された。私の真実が勝ったんです。私の青き真実は有効です。我が主、それをどうかお認めください。私は無能ではありません。失望もさせません。必ずやこのようにご期待に応えてみせますから、どうかお見 してにならないでください、我が主。
Facing someone that might have been somewhere beyond the ceiling, Erika spread her arms and yelled. Then, as if in answer, a massive lightning bolt landed very close by. It was an incredible sound. They could even feel the earth shake. At the same time as that sound, Erika went limp, falling into her seat like a puppet who just had all its strings cut. Then, as the sound of wind and rain gradually filled the room once again, Erika slowly opened her eyes as though recovering from a bout of dizziness. Then she continued eating in silence as though nothing had happened, as if she had been acting normally the whole time. Didn't Erika just stand up suddenly and rant at someone? Erika continued eating quietly, her behavior so perfectly normal that everyone started to doubt themselves. After seeing her behaving so calmly, everyone convinced themselves that they were totally worn out, and they must have just hallucinated Erika suddenly yelling. So Erika's sudden transfixation transfiguration of a few seconds ago was treated as a daydream. Are we going into what people imagine they saw versus what they actually saw? Are we going into this? And faded out of everyone's memory. Erika quietly poked at her salad and muttered in a voice no one could hear.
ありがとうございます、タイベルカステル卿。我こそウルダエリカ、我が主の駒にして分身。必ずやあなたのために最高の物語を献上してご覧に入れます。そうそう、やっぱりナイフとフォークって食器として原始的ですよね。お箸が一番です。サラダを最も食べやすいのはお箸だとは思いませんかね、皆さん。
Oh, the closet. That's right. That's right. Doesn't Natsui has to hide herself in the closet at 1 o'clock.
午前3時にバトラさんがゲストハウスに戻られて、その後30分くらいで皆さんも解散されたんですね。
そうよ。いい加減眠くなってきて、一眠りしてから仕切り直そうってことになったのよ。
To smoke out the murder of the first Twilight, Erika closely questioned everyone involved to check their alibis and evidence. To confirm these, she went around the mansion with them, and when needed, took several trips out to the guest house and through all the rain. Her vitality was admirable. Though she was an uninvited guest, everyone had long since stopped feeling anything strange about the way she imitated a detective.
Erika も着実に基礎を固めているようですな。
無駄なことよ。アリバイがあろうとなかろうと、わらわたちの存在を否定することなどできぬわ。金蔵は窓より逃れ、今や六軒島の霞よ。決して捉えることも否定することもできぬ。さしずめチェス盤の裏側にでも逃げ込んだ。
その場合はしまい込んだというのが適当でしょうな。
Stored away, maybe like the other bodies as well. The bodies that disappeared that I still don't know what happened to them.
そういえば、
Yeah.
例の第一の晩の死体、同じくしまい込んだのであったな。ええ、異界と人間界の狭間の私の暗黒にしまってあるわ。あの探偵気取りに見つけられることはあるまいな。当然よ。人間には絶対不可能だわ。確認する？念のためな。そしてわらわたちも今後のベルンカステル教の狙いを今一度読み直す必要があろう。
敵を知れば百戦も危うからずですな。
真に知れば百戦も戦わずに勝てるわ。
いやいや、全く。
Gap opened up a large pitch black hole in the sky and had it swallow all of them up. She invited Beato and Ronove to the gap between worlds where she had hidden the corpses. That place was nowhere in this world, and existed at no time of this world. In other words, it truly and literally was a place not of this world. In this place, questions such as where is this and what time is it had no meaning. Every single place led to here, but no place could be reached from here. Furthermore, all times connected to this place, but no time could be passed to from here. It feels like this is a riddle. In short, this place was just what they said it was, the underside of the chessboard. No, perhaps it would be more appropriate to call this the captured pile, where pieces that had let the game go. Then deep within this pitch-black world, 5 corpses came into view, illuminated by a glow like a faint spotlight. The 5 pitiful corpses with their necks sliced open had been arranged neatly. Their eyelids were shut and their hands joined. Apparently even Gap had respect for the dead.
おや、今回のゲームの第一の番の犠牲者は5人なのですか？6人ではなく。
おお、お師匠様ではないか。どこへ行っていたやら心配したのだぞ。ゲームはもう第一の番を迎えて、ご覧の通り最初の犠牲者が出ておるわ。さあ、いよいよだ。ワクワクしてきたぞ。
そうですか。ここのあなたは元気そうですね。何よりです。
わらわは元気と魅惑なボディ。あと気立ての良さくらいしか取り柄がないぞ。
For some reason, Vergiliae praised Beato for her high spirits. Though Beato was taken aback at such granny-like words coming out of Vergilia's mouth all of a sudden, she answered while bumping a fist against her chest. Vergiliae had been absent often during this game. She might even have been away from her seat when Battler solved the epitaph and during the uproar that followed. Apparently she had been absent for so many critical points that she didn't have a very good grasp of what had happened so far in this game.
今のところ出ている死体は5人。見ての通り、首をすっぱりよ。
Is the question going to come up about why 5 and not 6? George, Jessica, Maria, Rosa, Genji. Something sharp had sliced open all 5 of their necks. Those gaping wounds opened wider than their mouths, and made it feel as though they would no longer need their mouths to breathe.
なるほど。ジョージ、ジェシカ、マリア、ローザ、ゲンジの死体は誰が見ても一目で死亡が確認できる。
Because there's the question of, is the reason that the bodies moved because they weren't actually dead, but it's in the red. Can confirm at a glance that they are dead.
赤か。まあ、お師匠様にケチっても始まらぬ。そうとも、死んだふりなど絶対にありえぬ。誰もが一目で死亡を確認できる死体であるわ。
なぜリーヤは赤を？
さて、しかし常にお嬢様のことを思われている方です。お嬢様に利する何らかのお考えがあってのことでしょう。
But they had hidden the corpses here so no one could use the red. Despite that, however, Ronave was right. Vergiliae always thought of Beatrice first. The way these corpses, which Gap had gone to all the trouble of erasing, had now been confirmed with the red, made a slightly displeased expression rise to Gap's face. However, in the end, she remembered she was only a guest and shrugged.
なぜガープに死体を隠させたのですか？
今回のわらわのゲームはすでに碑文が解かれているため普段とは変わっておる。今は夏日に仕え、夏日を守ることを目的にしているのだ。
彼らの死体を隠蔽することがどう夏日を守るのです？
向こうの手は大体読めてるの。多分これは夏日を追い詰めるための罠。おそらく第一の番のアリバイを突き詰めていくと、夏日以外の全員にアリバイが現れるのよ。
夏日様は昨べは最初に親族会議を抜けられ、その後はお部屋で一人でお休みでした。お気の毒なことに朝までアリバイが全くありません。
金蔵の存在はすでに否定不能とした。しかし一つだけ、それを打ち破る手が 敵に残されている。
なるほど。夏日を追い詰め、金蔵は存在しないと自白させるわけですね。
敵の狙いはおそらくそんなあたりよ。親族会議をめぐる駒たちの動きから、わらわたちはいち早く夏日の孤立を察知し、その罠に気づき、こうして手を打ったのだ。
死体が消える。全員にアリバイがある。運搬者は存在しない。魔女の存在を主張しつつ、同時に死亡説自体にも疑問を投じることで、夏日をギリギリ容疑者から逃すことができるわけ。
つまり夏日様は第一の番の犠牲者が実は死んだふりだったと主張することが可能ということですな。
いとこ部屋で大勢がその死を確実に確認しているにもかかわらず、
確認など赤き真実に到底及ばぬ。彼らがいくら確かな死亡を見たと主張しようとも、人間界に赤き真実は存在しない。死体が存在しない以上、夏日は彼らのその言い分を見間違い、トリック、もしくは彼らが全員嘘をついているなどで、いくらでも延々と言い逃れが可能なのだ。
赤き真実なき人間界においては、パーペチュアルチェックは最も有効な一手。
延々と相手を否定し合っての水かけ論、千日手。美しくないわ。
です。
Yeah, that would be a pretty boring game if that's all it was, is just you can't prove anything, so you just keep going back and forth over and over again. Nothing really gets solved. I want the mystery to be solved. But at the same time, I keep saying about how, like, I am also kind of on the witch's side when they keep trying to deny the human side, and I'm just, like, kind of rooting for them, but I do want to know the truth.
しかし、美しさとは勝利の先に望むもの。勝利を得ぬ者が欲すれば毒にしかなりませんよ。
勝てば官軍というでな。
私にとっては美しくなくても、航海者の魔女たちはそれを退屈しないと呼んで好むのかしらね。
なるほど。今回のゲームの流れを把握しました。随分といやらしいものになりそうですね。
100も承知よ。そして私たちはすでに夏日がこれからさらなる罠に誘い込まれるだろうことを知っている。
And Natsui didn't do so well last time. She walked right into their trap, and if it wasn't for Battler stepping in, she probably would have spilled the beans eventually.
罠？
ラムダデルタ教が生み出す
Yes,
19
let's
年
get
前
back
の
to this
男を
again.
名乗る何者かがすでに夏日を脅迫している。もうじきの午後1時にとある客室のクローゼットの中に入り、息を潜めよと命じているのだ。クラウスを人質に取られ、夏日は逆らえん。
Is whoever doing this just setting Natsui up to take the fall for the next murders? Where she doesn't have an alibi, being like, I was hiding in a closet, and they'll be like, okay, yeah, sure you were.
なるほど。
Because the whole thing is this guy said, if nobody finds you after an hour, then you win. So, obviously, they want to make it so that she doesn't have an alibi, and nobody knows where she was. Which means a murder might be happening soon. Or it'll be 2 murders, if it's following the epitaph.
必要ですね。かばいきれますか？
無論よ。何しろ夏日は犯人ではないのだからな。いくら犯人扱いしようとも、真実も幻想も我らに味方する。負ける道理などないわ。
Natsui threw her cup of black tea to the ground in protest to show the anger that flowed throughout her entire body.
それはどういう意味ですか？
Oh, is this a flash forward to this is where we picked up with the game? This is where the game started with everybody accusing each other in the parlor.
私が疑わしいというのですか？
先に抜けられて自室に戻り、朝まで部屋を出なかったというお話は賜りました。しかし それを証明していただかないとアリバイにはならないと申し上げてるのです。
証明？どうやって？
どうやってでも結構です。客観的にあなたには犯行が不可能だったと証明してもらえれば結構なのです。他の皆さんは協力してくださっています。夏志さんもそう邪険にされず、どうかアリバイとその証拠を示してもらいたいと思いまして。
そうよ、夏日姉さんには丸一晩の空白時間があるのよ。先に休むと言って会議を抜け、ゲストハウスへ行き、ジョージたちを襲ったかもしれない。バカなことを言わないでください。どうして私がジョージ君を、そして何より自分の娘を殺さなくてはならないというのですか？落ち着いて。私たちは等しく疑われてるわ。悲しいけど潔白の証明は各々がしなくてはならない。
ああ、俺たちだって疑いを晴らそうと必死に昨夜のアリバイ立証に頭を悩ませてるんだぜ。
夏日さんかて疑われて面白いはずもあらへん。悔しいと思うなら自分の潔白を証明する何かを探すのが先決とちゃうか？
The relatives spoke as though they were all under equal suspicion, but the mood about the place didn't feel so peaceful. Erika was still in the middle of confirming everything, but other than Natsui, who was unwilling to prove her alibi, everyone else had an alibi which was reasonably credible. Only Natsui, who claimed that just being suspected was an insult, was uncooperative with Erika, and her position began to grow more and more perilous. This parlor was no longer a place of comfort for Natsui, and the sound of the cup smashing had made that decisive.
バカバカしいことです。どうして娘を失った私が疑われるのですか？私が昨夜一人で先に休んだからと犯人と決めつけようとする悪意。こんな屈辱にはこれ以上耐えられません。へえ、耐えられなきゃどうするの？あなたの無実を証明するアリバイを何か示してみせなさいよ。そんなものないくせにジョージを返して、この人殺し。
Oh boy, here we go. We're getting into it with them.
予算買えば。夏日さん、あんたも少し疲れてるんや。もちろんそれはわしらもや。少し楽にせんか。
And Hideyoshi always the peacemaker.
だな、俺たちは少し気を張りすぎだ。
So everybody's gonna split up again, and another murder's gonna happen.
夏日おばさん、どこ行くんだ？
アリバイ探しも犯人探しも実に滑稽です。台風が過ぎ警察が来れば全てが白日の下にさらされるのです。私たちが探偵ごっこをする理由など何もない。違いますか、エリカさん？
一般論的にはそうですね。ですが私にはそれをする権限がありますので。
Because I am Fruta Erika, and because I say so. Who gave her that authority? No one asked. It was an authority given by words of power from a higher world, so the pieces weren't even allowed to doubt it.
私は退出します。警察が来るまで皆さんのくだらない問答にも付き合うつもりはありません。私を疑うならどうぞご自由に。それを疑い晴らすことも私は警察に委ねますので。
It may be a bit late to mention this, but, well, no, this happens every time. As usual, the phone couldn't connect to the police. Natsui said the police would come, but that wasn't exactly true. Strictly speaking, the boat to pick them up would come tomorrow, and they would be able to use the radio on that boat to contact the police. Well, it's not like I'll let everyone live that long anyway.
夏日さん、一人になるのは危険だ。ここにみんなで一緒にいた方が。
いいじゃない。それも立派な証明かもよ。これで夏日姉さんが実質で殺されてたりしたら、それも立派な無実の証明だわ。
よせよ姉貴、夏日さんも俺たちも少し一服した方がいいだろうよ。明日まで体が持たねえぜ。
一服はしても油断はせずね。明日どころか今夜も越せないかもしれないわ。
夏日おばさん、部屋へ帰るならしっかり施錠して、窓も鎧戸を閉めて安全にしててくれよ。俺は誰も疑いたくない。そしてそれ以上にもうこれ以上 誰にも犠牲になってほしくない。
ありがとう、バトラ君。では、私は部屋に戻ります。
Natsui must have conflicting feelings about Battler. He's the one who solved the epitaph and kind of threw everything into disarray, but he seems to be the only one who is on her side.
ゴーダ、あとは任せますよ。お客様にせめてこのような状況ではあってもご不自由をおかけしないように。
はい、奥様、心得ております。
With everyone watching her, Natsui left the parlor. On their faces, she could tell they were expecting the classic mystery pattern. That the first person to quarrel and leave the circle would become the next victim. Natsui couldn't disobey because of the threat against Kraus, who had been taken as a hostage. Very soon it would be 1 p.m., the time that had been arranged. She was to hide for an hour in a closet of a specific guest room. It was easy to suspect this bizarre order was a trap to select her as the next sacrifice. She thought of various ways to resist, but all methods would be useless against a culprit who had a hostage and was observing her from close by. So Natsui could do nothing but obediently follow his orders, and then claim she had been forced to do this for her husband's safety. As the arranged time had drawn near, Natsui had intentionally acted annoyed and smashed the cup on the ground to give her an excuse for slipping out of the parlor. At any rate, no matter how cowardly a trap it may be, I cannot disobey now. I am now the one who carries the burden of the one-winged eagle. Now that my husband, Kraus, had been captured, I must protect it, even if I have to crawl through mud. Of course, I am prepared to do that. I am Ushirumi Natsui. I hate to say it, but I feel like part of her might kind of enjoy being like, it is up to me now, not my useless husband who put us in the situation in the first place. I have to save us, and then I will prove my worth. Even if I'm not permitted to bear the one-winged eagle on my clothes, Father gave me permission to bear it in my heart. I think dashing away in a rage got me here without raising too much suspicion. So far, everything has gone well. Before my eyes was the doorknob of the specified guest room. However, I wondered about the lock. The servants are under orders to always lock any unused rooms. What will I do if it's locked? I dashed out of the parlor pretending that I was returning to my room. Going back and asking a servant to unlock this guest room would be obviously suspicious. If possible, I'd like to get this eerie hide-and-seek over with without anyone noticing. And that phone call from the one who claimed to be a man from 19 years ago. He said I would win if no one found me, but lose if anyone did find me. He said he'd release my husband whether I won or lost. But as a person with a hostage taken against me, I'd rather not lose. I don't like it at all, but I have to go along with this game. They're probably setting it up so if a murder does happen, and then they're scrambling to go find Natsui to tell her, and she's not in her room, that's going to look suspicious. And then for her to be like, I was in another room, or something, that's just going to make her look even more suspicious. I softly gripped the doorknob, and I could feel it was unlocked. Did Shannon or Kumasawa forget to lock it after cleaning? Or did that man unlock it in advance? That man couldn't be waiting for me in this room, could he? And then all that about hide and seek might have just been an excuse. I kept the fact I was coming here secret, and all the other people think I'm resting in my room. If I were to be killed in this situation, in this room, it might create a new baffling murder case, like an extension of the one which occurred this morning.
そうならば、むしろ好都合です。
Of course, it's going to be the flip to that, where this seems like an obvious trap, but it's not that simple. I think it's to make her look even more suspicious and not have an alibi when a murder does happen.
犯人と直接対決する良い機会ではありませんか。
Natsui had some experience with using a naginata, but only from casual lessons. Unlike Ava, she couldn't brag about being able to hold off a single ruffian indefinitely. As she was now, she had no realistic chance of prevailing over a man with malicious intent on her own, and no weapons that can make that possible. She readied herself and slowly opened the door. She couldn't afford to stand around in the corridor and risk being seen by someone. The atmosphere inside the guest room was ice cold, and she could sense no trace of a person waiting impatiently for her. All she could hear was the unsettling sounds of wind and rain. At first, that seemed to be proof no one existed to threaten her. But before long, it only stirred up the uneasy feeling inside her all the more. The closet was just off to the side of anyone entering the room. Lined up inside it was a set of hangers where guests could hang their coats. This closet, which had nothing hanging in it, was large enough for even an adult to hide in. She softly opened the closet. Of course, there was nothing inside. She would have to hide quietly in here for an hour. The room had a wood floor, but something like a carpet had been laid in the closet. It seemed sitting down wouldn't be a problem. She had been sure someone would be waiting for her in this room, or that a strange letter would be lying in the closet. She had even imagined the worst, that her husband's corpse might be inside. However, none of these things she imagined turned out to be true. All that was here was a cold guest room and a lifeless closet which silently urged her to go inside.
この中に1時間隠れていろというのですね。バカにした話です。
Natsui shrugged, turned around, and locked and chained the guest room door.
これでこの部屋には誰も入れないではありま
And
せ
now we
ん
have a locked room again. She's making her own locked room.
つまり1時間の間誰にも私を見つけることはできない。私の勝ちです。バカバカしいかくれんぼですね。
This would certainly result in a total victory in the hide-and-seek game against that mystery man. However, it was such an easy victory, it made her feel uneasy. This is normally against the rules of hide-and-seek. Even if I win, won't this displease the culprit? And everyone thinks I'm in my room right now. If they find a room with a chain set, that will be an impossible locked room to them. Erika was dashing around the mansion to confirm everyone's alibi. If she notices the chain is set on this room, there will probably be an uproar which will end in them cutting the chain and searching the room. If that happens, I'll be found hiding in the closet right away. It'd be easy for me to honestly confess why I was hiding, but that man insisted that I not reveal that. If I tell them, I might end up endangering my husband. Thinking of it that way, setting the chain, no, even locking the door might be a bad idea. That's right, this room was unlocked when I first came here. If it were to suddenly become locked, it's conceivable that it might catch someone's attention. It's better if I don't do anything unnecessary. That man only told me to hide.
結局言いなりになるしかないのですね。
I hate doing it, but I can't disobey. I undid both of those precious locks, went into the dimly lit closet filled with the smell of old wood, and managed to close the door from inside. Pitch black. It reminded me of when I was young, when I used to hide somewhere and then surprise my mother. But that peaceful recollection wasn't enough to kill off my anxiety. It really is pitch black. From in here, I won't even be able to check my watch to see if an hour had passed. I'll probably need to open the door a crack every once in a while to let in enough light for my watch. For now, I sat down and folded my legs. I thought about holding my knees to my chest, but it hurt my back when I tried. I'm not as young as I used to be. Even though I and the rest of my class were made to sit on the floor clasping our knees in every PE class as grade schoolers, I now have to struggle just to sit down. Just sitting down here for an hour will probably hurt a lot. I can't believe he expects me to sit in the darkness for a full hour, listening only to the wind and rain. Well, except for the being stuck in a closet part, that sounds quite relaxing. Ironically, Natsui had made Jessica do the exact same thing in the past. She had done it to scold Jessica's persistent bad habits and teach her a lesson when she was a little girl. She had thought that making Jessica stay put in the darkness would sprout a desire to reflect on her mistakes, and that this way she'd understand what she had done wrong. To Natsui, it almost felt like she was being made to do the same thing. If that were the true purpose of this hide-and-seek,
甘えた考えです。
this must be my naivete, the hope that if his goal is to make me repent, nothing will happen here during this hour. Uncertainty and fear of that man's shadow are not what I need right now. Will someone suddenly come to this room, open the closet, and do something horrible to me now that I've come here in total secrecy as promised? That's what I should be worrying about. The culprit, or one of his accomplices, is very close by. If they weren't, they wouldn't be able to observe me so thoroughly. I don't want to think about it, but it's highly likely the culprit bought off one of the servants. The culprit was able to hide an eerie card with autumn written on it in my room. My personal room is always locked. That trick wouldn't have been possible without a key. Instead of believing they obtained the key when the servants weren't looking, it's much more realistic to assume one of the servants lent the culprit a hand, or that the culprit is one of the servants. Bump bump bump. I don't know how that's possible. But I mean, he had a 1 in 4 shot of being right, and I feel like fall is most people's favorite season. The thought that this mystery man might be peeking into my heart sent goosebumps running across my whole body. It's true I like autumn, but I've never said that out loud. I don't think anyone's ever asked me either. I could even ask my husband what my favorite season is, and he would probably be stuck for an answer. Autumn is like the basic bitch answer. Fall is my favorite season. I feel like it's most people's favorite season. Like I said, you got a 1 in 4 chance of being right. No. There was one time I told it to a single person. That's right. Shannon. Oh, that seems too obvious. On an autumn day long ago, I happened to be in a good mood, and I mentioned that autumn was my favorite of the 4 seasons. I can't believe it. Then the culprit, or one of their accomplices, has to be Shannon. But now, because Shannon is probably my most suspected person, now I'm like, maybe it's not her because they're putting a lot of focus on it being her.
これはシャノンが関わっているという明白な証拠ではありませんか。それをあの秋というカードが証明しています。なんということ。10年にもわたり当家の世話になりながら。
I trembled and shook with rage. Didn't Kinzo once say the emotion of anger is the fastest sedative to cure fear and uncertainty? It's easy to tell the most fearful humans from within a crowd. They're always the first to get angry. I remember him telling me that. So I realized that this anger was a sign I was actually frightened, and I tried my best to remain calm. However, this is a fascinating clue I can use to turn things around. I bet Shannon's gonna end up dead next. Because I can't remember who was alive at the very beginning when they showed, like, the end of the game. I can't remember who was... I think Ava was there, yelling at Natsui. And Battler, of course, would be alive, because Battler always has to be alive till the end. But I feel like that would kind of put a dapper on things, or a damper on things. If she suspected Shannon, then Shannon winds up dead. Shannon might not be reliable as a servant, but if she's the accomplice used by that mystery man, this might actually be convenient. She's a timid girl. If I threaten her, she'll probably spill the name of the mastermind in an instant. I'll tell the police about this in secret. I'm certain this will be a big clue that will help in arresting the culprit.
あのカードで私を驚かし、うまく手綱を取れたつもりだったのでしょうが、むしろ墓穴を掘ったようですね。
I never told anyone except Shannon that I like Autumn. This is unshakable proof that she's working with a culprit. Though I thought that this time in the closet would crush me with uncertainty and uneasiness, it had actually given me the start of a counterattack. If I hadn't been given this time in darkness, I probably wouldn't have even noticed this. I felt almost grateful to the culprit for making up this foolish game. My mood brightened. I still couldn't guarantee my husband was safe, but I was determined to take him back and force the culprit to face judgment. I gripped my fist tightly, and further strengthened my resolve to avoid losing this fight at any cost. Rattle, rattle. At that moment, I heard the sudden sound of someone trying to force a locked door open, and my heart leapt. So they assumed that the door would be locked.
なんや、開いとったんか。
The voice was Hideyoshi's. I heard a quiet laugh, as though he were talking to himself, coming from what was probably the hallway. Apparently, he had thought it was locked and tried to unlock it, but it ended up locking the unlocked door instead. Once again, there was the sound of the lock turning, and this time, the door opened with a faint sound. Oh shit. Oh shit. I'm wondering if someone told Hideyoshi to come in here and maybe he's gonna get murdered, and then Natsui's in here with him. That's gonna look sus. Why is Hideyoshi-san in the room? And Ava's gonna be even more pissed because, like, she thinks that Natsui took away her son and now possibly her husband too. Footsteps, which sounded like his, came in, and there was a sound of him closing and locking the door behind him, and we've got a locked room too. Then came what seemed to be the sound of him setting the chain. Don't tell me Hideyoshi-san is the mastermind. Or else an accomplice. Maybe someone told him to come in here and lock the door. Is he planning to do something to me in this room? The door may only be locked from the inside, but it will still take some time to remove the chain. If Hideyoshi-san didn't intend to let me escape from here, there's no chance he'll give me time to fumble around with the chain. In that case, when he opens the closet door wide in just a moment, and looks down upon me sitting here pathetically, just what kind of horrifying words will he say? I don't want to be found. I don't want to be found. I beg you, pass right on by the closet door. Please keep going into the center of the room. My head was filled almost to bursting with a throbbing sound so loud, I almost missed hearing his noisy footsteps. So when I heard a clunking sound come from the center of the room, I finally realized that he'd passed by the closet and was deeply relieved. Alright, what's he doing in here? As he muttered, he did something that made a clunking sound. He was probably closing the shutters on the windows. Just in case. In case I try to escape out the window? No, that can't be it. That's right. When I left the parlor, everyone was talking about possibly taking a break. After all, several murders had occurred, and the weather was bad. There would be nothing abnormal about resting in a guest room here instead of returning to the guest house. In that case, locking up and closing the shutters to guarantee safety was the proper course of action to take. When he finished closing the shutters, there was a thunk as though he had flopped over on the bed. It was surprising how much of the situation could be grasped just by the sound. What's going on here? Did the man from 19 years ago plan all this out to put me in the same room as Hideyoshi-san? No, that probably isn't true. Clearly, he planned on me hiding here, but Hideyoshi-san coming to take a rest here might have been outside the scope of his plan. Although I'm surprised that, I'm guessing Goda just gave him the keys instead of having Hideyoshi, going over and unlocking the door for Hideyoshi himself. If we don't know who the culprit is, Goda should not be just giving keys out to people and be like, oh yeah, go let yourself in. Thinking about it that way, having him in the room might help to secure my own safety in an odd sort of way. Unlike his wife, Hideyoshi-san is the kind of person I can talk to. If Ava-san comes, things will probably get complicated. And also, yeah, why is Ava not with him? That's another thing. Maybe I should slip out of this closet now while he's still alone. Reveal everything just to him and ask for help. But if I do that, my husband might be killed. It isn't wise to do anything rash until my husband is released. Should I go out and talk, or hide in here? Moaning from my headache and biting my lower lip, I resisted the temptation to crawl out of here. Even if I talk with Hideyoshi-san, I don't know where my husband is being held. I'm sure the informant who's observing me is nearby as well. Just talking to him won't solve everything. I suspect Shannon is an informant, but that doesn't mean that Goda and the others aren't. No, Goda doesn't know shit. Goda's just out of the loop. What if Goda was the mastermind the whole time? He just played really good at just being the bubbling outsider. It's no good. Leaving here and confessing is just too dangerous. Eventually I heard a strange sobbing voice. Whose voice was it? I strained my ears trying to hear that strange voice, and was shocked to discover it was Hideyoshi weeping. Aww. Well, his son just died, right? He's probably just trying to keep it all in and be brave and be a rock for Ava, because Ava's like very emotional. She let it all out, where Hideyoshi was trying to keep it to himself, and now he's just like by himself, he's just letting it out. Now he was all alone like this. Hideyoshi, who had lost his only son, was finally able to shed tears and cry, thinking that he needed to support Ava in her distress. He had acted as though he alone was standing firm. However, he had as good a right as any to cry, and now he had found a place where no one could see his tears. He was finally allowing himself to let it out. I've lost my daughter, too. I haven't seen her body with my own eyes, so it still doesn't really feel like she's dead. But if the one who carried her off was the culprit, and he had some repulsive motive for doing it, just thinking about it makes me feel as though my chest will tear itself apart. The reason I'm hiding in here as I'm thinking more about my still living husband than my dead daughter. And if I were given the chance, I'd be wailing at the top of my lungs too. However, I still can't let myself do that. That isn't because the man from 19 years ago told me to hide. It's because I am the final head of the Ushiromiya family. It's been completely overshadowed by all of this, but last night, Battler-kun found the hidden gold and even gained the head's ring from that mysterious envelope. At the very, very end, when it's all over, I probably won't be able to prevent him from inheriting the family headship. And when everything regarding the distribution of the inheritance is revealed, the Ushiromiya family honor and glory passed down from father will plummet to the earth. So, I am the final head. Battler-kun will probably inherit the remaining wealth of the Ushiromiya family. However, its history and honor will all end with my generation. Therefore, I am the final head. I must not cry. Not yet. Until I get my husband back and avenge my daughter, I will not be allowed to shed tears. As I listened to Hideyoshi-san's sobs from the closet, I silently hung my head. Oh shit! Holy sh- Oh, someone's coming in the room and gonna kill him. Someone's gonna kill him. Huh? My heart leapt. Hideyoshi-san, who must have been lying prostrate on the bed, made a sound as though he had bounded to his feet. Did he notice me? Uh-oh, yeah, I mean, we knew it was gonna happen. He was clearly in a struggle with someone. Who could it be? No, it doesn't matter who it is. It's probably the culprit. And they're probably trying to take Hideyoshi-san's life at this very moment. Oh shit. It's a matter of like, do I come out and save him? Or do I do what I'm supposed to do to save my husband? Shouldn't I jump out of here and help him? Even if I couldn't help him, I can at least call for help. But if I do something like that, I'll be questioned about why I was hiding here. However, Hideyoshi-san goes on and gets killed now. No, now isn't the time to be saying that. At this rate, he'll definitely be killed. I'll jump out of here and help him right now. But if I do that, even if I can save Hideyoshi-san, I might be abandoning my husband's life. Hideyoshi-san's life and my husband's life. How sinful it would be to try and weigh those against each other. Just then, there was a loud sound of the door opening and the chain being pulled tight. Someone was trying to open the door despite the chain being set. Oh no, this is real bad.
Eva!
Oh, and I bet he got his throat slit too. She opened and closed the door over and over again with all her might, but of course, she couldn't snap the chain. Eva-san raced down the hallway, calling for help in a loud voice. And they're gonna find Natsui, and it's gonna look real bad. By this time, the room had settled back into silence, and that earlier feeling of Hideyoshi being in a noisy struggle had disappeared completely. What's going on here? So right now, I'm in the same room as the murderer who killed Hideyoshi-san. In that case, the culprit should try to escape from the room as soon as possible. So why are they staying so quiet in here? I haven't heard anything. Nothing that might have been the culprit who attacked Hideyoshi-san running away. No matter how much I strain my ears, I can't sense anyone in the room. In fact, it's so silent that it makes what happened just a second ago feel like an illusion. In other words, does this mean that the culprit is holding his breath? Standing right in front of this closet, waiting for me to shamelessly come out? I don't even know what to be scared of anymore. If only I could just melt away in the darkness of this closet. I mustn't remain in this room any longer. I get the feeling I have more to worry about than just my personal safety. But what should I do? I don't even know if it's a good idea to leave this closet. Before long, the clamor of many rushing footsteps approached. I held my breath again and melted away in the darkness of the closet. Alright, well the episode started a little bit slow with the talk in the Golden Land with Beatrice and Delanor and Battler and Regalia, but we got that kind of satisfying part of Erika getting knocked down a couple of pegs And we're full on back into the murders again, happening earlier than I was expecting. Seems to just be one murder this time. So now we have a situation with a true locked room murder with Natsui in it. As I kind of expected, it seems like she's being set up to be the culprit, to be the most suspicious one. Whoever this guy is that's setting her up for this. So it's going to be very hard for her to try and explain her way out of this one. But yeah, I'm excited to see, like, you know, what's going to be going on with this, what Erika's going to have to say about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and stay tuned next week for part 58. Until then, bye. Special thanks to my top tier patrons: Nana, Kaori Makoto, Revealing Storm, Tequila Mockingbird, Jared Fan, Joel Ostman, Harry Gazif, Pirate, Puncake G, Saya, Asborn Kennedy, Icognito, and Mad Goldsmith.